Hook, October 23rd, 2002, 3 a.m., Los Angeles. Kanye West falls asleep at the wheel. His car drifts across the lane and hits another vehicle head-on. His jaw shatters into 3 pieces. Doctors wire it shut. He can barely speak. He can barely eat. He nearly dies. 3 days later, 3 days, his friend Consequence gets a phone call. Kanye is on the other end, rapping, with his jaw wired shut. Rapping. Consequence's exact words were, "What the fucking is wrong with you? Why are you rapping right now?" And that right there, that moment, tells you everything you need to know about the psychology of Kanye West, and everything you need to know about what it actually takes to believe in yourself when the whole world has already decided who you are and what you're capable of. Intro. His name is Kanye Omari West, born June 8, 1977 in Atlanta, raised in Chicago by a single mother, Donda West, an English professor who supported his dreams even when it terrified her. He is one of the most controversial, polarizing, complicated human beings on the planet. And this video is not about defending him. It's not about canceling him. It's not about his politics or his controversies or anything that happened after the music. This video is about one specific thing. What happened before anyone knew his name? The psychology of a man who was told, repeatedly, specifically, by the people whose job it was to know, that he was wrong about himself, and what he did with that. Section 1. Everyone told him no. Here is what the music industry saw when they looked at Kanye West in 2002. A kid from suburban Chicago, middle class, never hustled, never sold drugs, wore pink shirts with the collar up and Gucci loafers in rooms full of men in baggy jeans and jerseys. Jay-Z, the man Kanye idolized, looked at him and said, "We all grew up street guys who had to do whatever we had to do to get by. Then there's Kanye, who to my knowledge has never hustled a day in his life. I didn't see how it could work." Damon Dash, then CEO of Rockefeller Records, said, "It was obvious we were not from the same place or cut from the same cloth." Capitol Records passed. Label after label passed. Not because he wasn't talented. He was already producing hits for Jay-Z, Ludacris, Alicia Keys. They knew he could make music. They just didn't believe he could be the music. "It was a strike against me that I didn't wear baggy jeans and jerseys, and that I never hustled, never sold drugs," Kanye said later. The industry had a template for what a rapper looked like, and Kanye didn't fit it. So rather than expand the template, they told him he was wrong. Now here's the psychology lesson. When the people in power tell you that you don't fit, that your vision of yourself doesn't match what they're willing to believe, most people do one of 2 things. They change themselves to fit the template, or they walk away. Kanye did neither. He kept showing up as exactly who he was and refused to let other people's limited imagination become his ceiling. He told Complex, "I really started grinding, just trying to sell beats to people. I worked a telemarketing job. He'd come home from work and go straight to the studio. Not because anyone believed in him, because he believed in himself more than their doubt." Section 2. The accident that should have ended everything. So back to that night. October 23rd, 2002. Kanye has been in the studio all night producing for Beanie Sigel, Petey Crack, and the Black Eyed Peas. It's 3 a.m. He gets in his car to drive home. He falls asleep at the wheel. The crash shatters his jaw into 3 pieces. Doctors perform emergency reconstructive surgery. They wire his jaw shut to let it heal. He's told to rest, recover, stay quiet. What does he do? 3 days after the accident, he calls Consequence, rapping through the wire verses. His jaw is literally wired together, and he is rapping. 2 weeks after the accident, his jaw still wired shut, he is at the record plant studio recording the song. His friend Consequence later said, "The accident wound up being a blessing for him. Whatever diction issues he had, he came back with a super clear voice." Kanye recorded his first solo single with a broken jaw, wired shut, and it was better than anything he'd recorded before. Now think about what's happening psychologically here. Most people, when hit by a devastating setback, use it as a reason to pause, to reassess, to ask whether this is a sign. Kanye used it as fuel. He didn't see the accident as the universe telling him to stop. He saw it as proof that nothing could stop him. He said it himself later. "The accident wound up being the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me, and now it's obviously the best thing." That reframe, turning the worst moment into the origin story, is not accidental. It's a choice, and it's one of the most powerful psychological tools that exists. Section 3. The psychology of delusion that turned out to be vision. Here's the part nobody talks about enough. At the time, Kanye was insisting he was going to be a rapper, not just a producer, a rapper. The people around him genuinely thought he was delusional. Not just the label executives, his own collaborators, his own friends. The people who respected his beats thought his rapping was a phase, a distraction, an ego trip. And from the outside, they weren't wrong. He was producing platinum records for other people. He had a lane, a successful, lucrative lane. Why would you walk away from that to chase something you've been told repeatedly you can't do? Because he could see something they couldn't. There's a concept in psychology called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people overestimate their own ability. But there's a flip side that doesn't get discussed as much. The people around you are also subject to their own cognitive limitations. They can only see what has already been proven possible. They can only imagine what already exists. Kanye was imagining something that didn't exist yet. A rapper from the suburbs who talked about college, about consumerism, about his mother, about God, who wore backpacks and polo shirts, who made beats that sounded like nothing anyone had heard before. They called it delusion. It was actually vision. The difference between delusion and vision is timing and execution. Kanye had both. When The College Dropout dropped in 2004, it didn't just succeed. It changed what hip-hop was allowed to be. It gave permission to an entire generation of artists who didn't fit the street template to exist. Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Drake, Kid Cudi. The blueprint Kanye wrote with his wired jaw made all of them possible. Section 4. What happens when the world decides it owns you? Here's where the story gets complicated and more honest. Kanye spent his whole early career proving the world wrong about who he was, and then he spent the next decade struggling with what happens when the world decides it owns you. The same conviction that made him great, the absolute refusal to accept other people's version of him, became harder to navigate when the stakes got bigger. When the whole world had an opinion about Kanye West, separating his own voice from the noise became almost impossible. We now know he was dealing with undiagnosed bipolar disorder. We know the 2002 car accident caused neurological damage to his frontal lobe that went undetected for over 2 decades. We know he was carrying more than anyone around him understood. And that doesn't erase the harm he caused. But it adds a dimension that matters when we're talking about psychology. Because the same trait, the absolute belief in your own vision against all external opposition, that is a superpower in one context, becomes a vulnerability in another. When the thing you need to filter out is other people's doubt, total self-belief saves you. When the thing you need to hear is genuine concern from people who care about you, that same filter can isolate you completely. The lesson isn't that self-belief is always right. The lesson is that self-belief needs to be in conversation with reality, not controlled by it, but in honest contact with it. Section 5. The real lesson. So what does Kanye's story actually teach you? It teaches you that the people who gatekeep your dreams have limited imagination, that they can only offer you opportunities that already exist. They cannot see the door you're trying to open because they've never seen it before. Their no is not information about your potential. It's information about the limits of their vision. It teaches you that your worst moment, the thing that should end you, can become your origin story if you decide to treat it that way. Kanye could have let that accident be the reason he stopped. Instead, he turned it into the thing that started everything. It teaches you that being different from the template is not a weakness. It is the only way to make something genuinely new. If you fit perfectly into what already exists, you can fill a role. If you're willing to be what hasn't existed yet, you can create a category. And it teaches you, honestly, uncomfortably, that the same belief that carries you forward can also cut you off from people who love you. That self-belief without self-awareness can become a prison you build yourself. The goal isn't to be Kanye. The goal is to take the specific thing he did in those years before anyone believed in him. That refusal to let someone else's doubt become his truth, and apply it to whatever you're building. Because somewhere right now, there's a version of you that has been told no. That doesn't fit the template. That is being told the vision you have for yourself is unrealistic. And you're about to decide what to do with that. Outro. Kanye recorded his first song with his jaw wired shut, not because he was fearless, not because he had nothing to lose, but because the voice inside him was louder than the pain. That voice exists in you too. The question is whether you're going to let someone else's doubt talk over it. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. I'll see you in the next one.